Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are back with another episode of Daily Palantir, and on today's show, we have to discuss a brand new partnership that Palantir launched yesterday with a company they've been working with for about a year now, Carahsoft, since 2022. But an extension of that partnership is now happening in Canada. I think there's a lot of implications for this partnership. The scale of Carahsoft as a company, I didn't even know about until today morning. So I'm going to tell you about what their scale is and why working with Palantir, particularly in Canada, is a good thing for their government revenue growth, which the Wall Street Journal article came out on Monday saying that that's struggling. So we're going to talk about that. Second, we'll talk about price action. And then finally, Shyam, CTO of Palantir, and Hirsh, Jain, head of Palantir's healthcare business. They recently did some fireside chats. I want to play a couple of those clips and react to those and discuss some more implications about the things that they said. Don't go anywhere. Friday. Thank you for being here. Let's get into the show. All right, so first thing let's discuss is price action on the stock. 1643 down about 0.17% on the day. Really, it's been a kind of flat week for Palantir. As you can see right here, we touched the bottom at 1631 on January 25th. Today's January 26th, so that was yesterday. And we had a really, strong momentum on Monday, 1835, January 22nd, and then that fell down to 1773, and we kind of just kept falling over the past 5 days, now here at 1643. In my opinion, in the context of price action, really, it's just a question of what's happening on earnings at this point. Earnings is going to determine pretty much where the stock is going to go and how the stock is going to behave over the coming weeks. I've said this, and I'll do a proper earnings video next week. Next week is the last week before earnings, right? Or we have 2 weeks left, basically. But it's going to be February 5th. If guidance comes in below 20%, I think the stock's going to struggle. If guidance comes in above 20%, I think the stock will either be flat or have momentum to go higher, as long as the guidance is like somewhat better than just 20%, maybe 22, 23%, that would be awesome. If the guidance is above 25% year-over-year growth, that is where I think investors are going to be like, oh, this is actually an AI play that's profitable, that's growing, and that has no signs of slowing down. And that's going to be the really, really exciting part of Palantir's journey that we're going to be able to see if they can guide that high. My personal thoughts are that they're not going to guide that high. They're going to guide 20 to 22, and then throughout the middle of the year by Q2, they'll guide higher, hopefully to that 25 to 30% range. But if we don't get stronger guidance, we just can't expect the valuation to be at this level or to be able to be sustainable. Especially Wall Street's not going to be able to sustain it like that. So we'll see. I think that's the only thing that matters. 1643, 1612, 15. I mean, we haven't seen 15 in a while. We saw 1595. That dip got eaten up, and then we went right back to 16. There's a lot of appetite for the stock below $16. The question is the guidance that bad where that appetite starts to die off, and then only the people that really believe in the long-term vision end up getting those prices. We'll see what happens on February 5th. I'll be live streaming it on the channel, but so far this week, pretty much just down about 2-3%. All right, so let's get into the big news of the week, which was the Carahsoft partnership. This partnership was very important, in my opinion, and it kind of showed why Palantir is starting to figure out different ways to increase their government business. So here we go. This is what we're looking at right now on the screen. Palantir and Carahsoft expanded partnership to deliver mission-critical software to the Canadian public sector. Quick summary of the partnership. Palantir and Canada's Carahsoft have partnered to expand their delivery of Palantir's operating systems to the Canadian public sector. Carahsoft has been authorized as sole distributor of the Palantir platform under the Government of Canada's software licensing supply arrangement. This partnership provides the SLSA clients with an expedited channel to acquire Palantir software solutions, including AIP. Palantir software is used globally for mission-critical purposes, and this partnership aims to support digital modernization efforts for government agencies in the US and Canada. Now, before I get into some broader analysis, Carahsoft, I looked at this today, this is by Bard. As of 2021, Forbes estimated the revenue to be $9 billion. In 2020, they reported $6.6 billion in revenue. And so the reason this was really interesting to me was because I was like, wait a second, this is a big company. This isn't just a small company that's working with Palantir, and I didn't know they were this big before. Now, why does this matter? Palantir and Carahsoft partnered in early 2022, essentially for them to be a sales distribution channel. Think of them as a middleman, a system integrator, where they can repackage Palantir's software offering to the government. We're talking about not just the DoD, the Army, the military, but we're talking about the IRS, all these subsidiary agencies that work within the government, particularly in the United States, and there's really hundreds of them, that potentially could benefit off Foundry or off AIP or some smaller version of what Palantir software looks like. And these agencies are constantly procuring software. Sometimes they can't go literally to the tech company to get the software, so they go through a system integrator like Carahsoft. And what's so special about this is essentially Palantir has to do nothing. They just say, hey, Carahsoft, you take the salespeople, you take the hard work of like dealing with the bureaucracy of the government, at least for these types of deals. we're going to give you a commission on if you sell it. And if you sell it and you get 5 or 10%, whatever, at least we didn't have to worry about that customer acquisition cost in terms of the raw time it would take for Palantir salespeople to get the deal done. So it's a really good thing to have a lot of these people. It's similar to what they're doing with Accenture, similar to what they're doing with PwC. And, in the government space, Accenture and PwC are more so commercial partnership for Palantir. But if they could have hundreds of these system integrators working across the world, if every single major government client that buys Palantir software, not just for defense, but in a variety of other different use cases, right? Because defense, you're probably going to go through Palantir themselves. If Palantir could have, in Sweden, the Carahsoft of Sweden, or in Japan, the Carahsoft of Japan, or all these different places, and just say, hey, you'll get 10%, 15%, you'll get 20%. Just sell our shit to the government. I think that would be very beneficial. So this partnership expands them to Canada. Now, why is this so important? The Wall Street Journal article that came out on Monday basically said investors should be very scared. There's a high multiple on the stock, but the government business is slowing down, and there's a 43% of 43% of the revenue that Palantir brings is government business. So if almost half your business is government revenue, they're going to about to do 1.2 billion TTM just on the government business, and the government business is slowing down. It's not CAGRing at the level that Karp said it would CAGR, even though his argument is that if you give it enough years, it will CAGR at that level. Then why are you buying the stock at such pricey levels? And my retort to that was primarily, number one, you got to give it time. You can't judge a quarter over quarter. There are some years government's good, some years government's bad. That's what Karp said. So it eventually plays out. And number two, what's the alternative? Yes, I know Booz Allen Hamilton and Deloitte might be a little cheaper, but essentially they're consulting firms that just want to get billable hours, and maybe they create some open source software that you feel better about. Palantir's closed software that is more expensive. Yes, you have to spend more money, but it gets the job done and it works. And the existential question becomes, does the government want to spend less money and have something that maybe works, maybe doesn't? Or do they want to spend a little bit more and get an actual solution that gets the job done? I don't know. We'll see how it plays out over the next few months in terms of updates on Palantir's government business. But I think at the end of the day, the article just felt like it was implying Booz Allen Hamilton will do a better job at some of these really hard tasks, particularly in the defense space, that Palantir is doing. And I'm not saying Booz Allen Hamilton can't create some levels of software that are good for the government. They've been doing this for a long time. But in the context of Palantir, it's like this is a joke, right? This is not a question, Booz Allen Hamilton versus Palantir. So from that perspective, I think Palantir's government business will be okay, but we do have to expand and diversify. Our international commercial and government growth has been bad. U.S. commercial is really what's helping us. Expanding to Canada is very important. We've already been working with Canada from a cybersecurity perspective for a while now. We've been working with different parts of their government. If Carahsoft can actually implement Palantir software in a variety of different parts of Canada's government, and we get a little bit more cozier with Canada's government, and then here's the kicker. In the next 3 years, we solve the NHS. Solve meaning we fix the NHS. Canada's healthcare system is not the most amazing from what I've heard from people that live in Canada. Okay, it's socialized. Canadians do enjoy the fact that they don't have to pay for healthcare, but at least some of them, but a lot of them also think it's inefficient. So I could just imagine us warming up with the Canadian government from a defense perspective. Obviously, Canada is a big ally of the United States, and we work heavily with the United States. And then from a healthcare perspective, I think those are two major verticals that we can make billions of dollars off of over the next decade, just in Canada alone, which is why Palantir is so exciting to me, because that's Canada alone. Then what about Japan? What about Sweden? What about Germany? What about France? What if we just expand internationally on healthcare and defense in all of these NATO countries? Healthcare and defense, two verticals. Give me 20 countries, give me 10 years. I think that could become a very, very big business for Palantir. But we have to do that. So the partnership with Carahsoft today was really good, just showing that we are furthering the expansion of the government business, and we have essentially someone that does all the selling for us, and if they can sell it really well, Palantir should be able to get more money from the Canadian government. Okay, last thing for today that I want to discuss is a couple of clips that came out from Palantir. This is from Hirsh Jain, the head of public health at Palantir Tech, and we got Shyam talking. Just two clips I wanted to show you guys. They both did some longer keynotes, but two things that I thought were really important. So let's play those here, and then we'll get there. So this is Hirsh Jain, and then we'll do Shyam.
Thank you so much for moderating. Thank you to the Reagan Institute for being here, for allowing us to be here. I think as the introduction covered, Palantir is a software company. I'm a technologist by trade, and where we really specialize is in helping federal agencies and all of our partners make better use of their data to drive decision-making. We were born in the aftermath of 9/11, and so our roots are really in national security and in protecting intelligence, as are my personal roots. And then over the last 2 decades, we've seen how readily that approach of connecting the data in an organization to the analysts and the decision makers scales and can be widely applied. Over the last couple of years, we've gone from being the backbone of just the federal government response to COVID to really serving as a backbone across a number of other public health areas of interest, 30 plus disease areas at CDC, research infrastructure across cancer and a number of other diseases, as well as really helping manage federal supply chain and visibility into medical countermeasures. And so where does that leave us today? In some ways, I think this is a nexus of the investments we've made in healthcare over the last 5+ years, as well as the roots that we have in national security. I think, any technology historically that can be engineered has been used with a tremendous amount of opportunity for investment and growth and accelerating real outcomes. There's also real risk that comes with that. And so I think from a infrastructure and a technology and how we actually make use of the tools and the data that we have, the place we're really focused is on what a national biosecurity infrastructure looks like, what the domain of biointelligence looks like, and what the partnerships between the public and the private sector are going to need to be to make sure that we're secure.
Okay, so I thought this was a really exciting clip to look at. And the reason for that is because sometimes I feel like we have to remember this is why patience is so important. Palantir started collaborating with the U.S. government during the pandemic, right? And I mean, particularly in the public health sector, right? Obviously, they've been working with the government for a while, but from a public health perspective, they were the backbone operations to make sure that the U.S. government had things under control. And then, and this similarly happened in the UK government, the U.S. government, and from the public health perspective, realized, wait, we could use these people in a lot of other places. The NIH started collaborating with them. National Institute of Health, the CDC, start collaborating with them. And then, as Hirsh mentions, they become the backbone for cancer research. They become the backbone for actual implementation of health policy and the recommendation of how that should be working from an AI machine learning perspective, and how software works with public health, which is a very big issue considering the fact that the public health debates that we've had in this country over the past couple of years have been massive. So Palantir is playing a very vital role. And what Hirsh is saying is that after 9/11, the company used a payment fraud mitigation technologies developed at PayPal, and they took the idea of that and said, can we apply that to the US government? The reason I love covering Palantir is because it is an idea that is then universalized across a variety of verticals in the public and the private sector, and then you get a million different use cases from it. Whether it's being the backbone for figuring out how to manage a data distributive system around vaccines, or whether it's for cancer research. And we just saw them get a grant with the University of Colorado. That was a $29 million grant from the NIH, because Palantir has been working with the NIH. That's what I talked about in my newsletter a couple of days ago, about why that partnership with the NIH expands to so many different sectors. Healthcare is a very important vertical on the commercial side and a very important vertical on the public side, and the public health version of Palantir's business, I think, is also incredible, and I think can grow massively over the next 10 years if Palantir continues to provide value to the US government. Let's do one last clip with Shyam talking about the role of a forward deployed engineer, and then we'll go from there.
Let me build on the dialectic that's essentially been proposed between adoption and innovation, and the struggle between those two, because that's something we really started off in the very beginning. And we conceived of this role of what has now become a more commonplace term, but the forward deployed engineer, not the engineer who's making the product, but you can actually kind of think about it as the engineer who's working on adoption. How do I engineer adoption? It's not just cultural, it's not just social, it is those things, but there's more to it. And you have this dissonance. And by the way, this is true whether it's a commercial institution, you're trying to help Airbus change how they make airplanes, or it's a government organization where if you can't answer the question of why is the user's life better for using this, not because it's the right thing to do, not because it's moving the organization forward, but how is my very narrow, I just want to go home at 5 p.m. How do I appeal to the most base sort of need that this person has? And as a consequence of doing the easy thing, I'm doing the right thing. That's where the engineering really comes in. Let me build on the...
And this is the reason why I show that is because it's so important. What Shyam's talking about right there is why forward deployed engineers were so vital originally as Palantir started, and why they still play such an important role in regards to making people's lives easier. When you're working at a company and you're a forward deployed engineer and you're helping those people understand how to use Palantir's AIP or Founder or whatever software they're using, it's really a question of how are you making their life easier, right? And with the advance of AIP, what I've heard is that the forward deployed engineers aren't needed as much. They're still needed, but AIP kind of solves a lot of problems, right? The same question you would ask the forward deployed engineer, you could ask the AIP terminal and it gives you a response, right? And it can actually make you more productive. But this idea of how does software make the world easier for the end users that are using my software? This is what Shyam talked about on the 20 VC podcast. We'll probably react to some clips here and there over the next couple of days, but I did a full 2-part reaction to that. If you click live on the YouTube channel, Palantir Deep Dives, episode 5 and 6, we reacted to that whole thing. And the entire concept was, hey, We need to make people's lives easier. And to make people's lives easier, you need to actually build software that works. In the defense space, you really need to build software that works, not just, billable hours by consulting firms. And if you make stuff that's easy and that works, and you do the hard, heavy lifting, which is what an FDE is supposed to do for the end user that just wants to go home at 5 p.m., that works at a different company, then they're going to use the software. They're going to use the software more. They're going to like the software more. They're going to have a better brand affinity to Palantir helping them. And essentially, they're going to become more productive. And if AIP can kind of streamline that, 10x that, without needing a forward-deployed engineer, which should increase the margins for Palantir and increase the productivity for the company using AIP and hopefully increase the average order value of AIP over the long term in terms of revenue per client, then I think that's going to be where the bull case lies for Palantir actually building software that works, not worrying about getting paid immediately, giving it away for free. And when the value is there, the money comes as a byproduct of that. And all these other software companies that don't provide the value, they don't get the sale. That's where I think we should be betting on. Where is the real value? Not the fake value, not the money. Where is the real value? Because everything else is a byproduct of that. And that's just true for life. Being authentic and being real is where you get the best results, not just being fake and trying to get a quick buck. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and it was nice to see Shyam participate in that fireside chat. All right, that's it for me. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. DailyPalantir.substack.com. Please subscribe to my free email newsletter for Palantir. And what else do we have to do? Palantir Weekly tonight, 11 p.m. Lots to discuss. So we'll be talking there, and I'll see you guys then. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.